Welcome to Crime and Wine. I'm Pamela Fagan Hutchins, your host, and this is the show where I talk with other crime fiction writers about the stories of thrills and suspense that will leave you mystified, sometimes horrified, and always wanting more. Please join me in welcoming today's special guest. Hey, you guys, it's Pamela Fagan Hutchins. Welcome to Crime and Wine. I am pretty excited today to welcome a writer that I absolutely love. I'm a fan of his Nick Drake series, and I am, before I do that, going to give a shameless plug because you guys may recall this is the year of 1 million releases for me, 6 to be exact. So I want to point out that you can go pick up Skin and Bones, Patrick Flint #8, or Detective Delaney Pace, her first 3 books, Her Silent Bones, Her Hidden Grave, and Her Last Cry. Really head to Amazon or head to my website, and those will point you to all the great places you can get all the great formats. Oh my gosh, I already see commenters lining up here. So you guys are ready to go. I want to make sure I get our guest on first. This author, as I said, writes books that I love and I know you are going to love, especially those of you that are fans of the Patrick Flint series. And he brings his background as a journalist with an adventure travel journalist who focused in on wildlife, weather, and landscape and the culture surrounding it into bear for his Nick Drake series. So please join me in welcoming Dwight Holing. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I also want to thank all your viewers and the audience out there. How great is this?
They are so awesome. And let's see who's already knocking on our door wanting to talk here, because we've got comments coming in. Hello, Charlene's all capadis. So I am, as I was telling you earlier, I'm a fan, and I think my readers will be too. So I'm going to set this up for them, and you tell me if I get it wrong. So Nick Drake is a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Ranger, right?
Yes.
A Vietnam veteran, wounded, physically, mentally, emotionally, and is working out in the wilds of Oregon. Is that pretty much sum up his ethos or his pathos?
You know, I couldn't write a thumbnail better myself, and that's exactly what it is. I think it's also important to, point out that my books are set in the starting in 1969, and I'm up into the 70s now. Every book is a new year, so it's they're somewhat historical, but it's also during a very tumultuous time that's going on, not only in Nick Drake's life, but for the country at large, a time of change, and not too unlike what's going on right now in the world. So it's a great intro to that.
It's interesting how, things go in cycles. And that period of time, I don't think we've seen that kind of social upheaval again until the present. And that even though they're set 45, 50 years apart, that people will feel a resonance there.
Yeah, I think you're right. And for a writer like me, as you said, I come from a journalist background, and I went to school in the University of Oregon. That's where I got my degree in journalism and started writing about the environment, nature, and travel and adventure. And all that comes together here in Nick's life. But there's another added component to it besides sort of the world stage that's going on is, in my opinion, it was also the best time for rock and roll music. And so I get to have a little soundtrack going in my head while I write. And I should put together a Spotify list and put it out there.
You really should. Do you actually put together your own playlists for yourself, or you just randomly like, this is what Nick would be vibing to today? I mean, how do you do that?
Yeah, a little bit of both. And so in the books, I'll put that in there if he's listening to a Joni Mitchell song or a Van Morrison song or one of those that's going on. And it helps me write, and it also, I think, puts the reader into the mood a bit.
I love that. Well, for so many of us, music is a shortcut to how we felt when we heard it, the moment we were in. It brings everything back. And Charlene says she agrees about the music. You totally have to do a Spotify playlist. You could link to it. You could put a link in the back of the books, for people to say, here you go, jam to this while you read about murder, mayhem, wildlife, music, etc. So taking you back earlier in your writer's career, I do a little stalking of people before I have them on the show. So I don't know if you felt the like vibes of me coming after you today, but
I took down the camera that you'd mounted in my office here, so that's okay.
oh, good. I don't want to go to jail. So when I was looking at your website and I was noticing all the similarities in what we do, one of the things I loved was you were talking about your writing career as a third grader. I very much link the start of my writing career back to third grade, but I loved the story you told about the story you wrote. I don't know if you want to tell it in your own words now, but the listeners and the viewers are going to love this one.
Well, it was a third grade assignment I got, and we were supposed to write a short story. And back in those days, you're just learning how to do penmanship, and I was weaned on mysteries, and so I wrote a mystery, and I called it Bloody Murder, and I wrote the title in red ink. Well, the teacher gave it back, with a big fat F on it. But I learned my first lesson in irony because she used red ink too on giving me the F. So there you go.
Bloody murder on your bloody murder.
Yeah.
On her for not giving
Yeah.
for creativity. So to tell you the different path that we were on at that point, because there's no question that that Dwight and I now write with our Patrick and Nick books, things with a similar feel. But back then, my first foray into writing was a recipe for love. And I think I got an A. So the teacher must have vibed on that better, the whole maybe it's which teacher you get, because honestly, I would have rather read Bloody Murder. I love it. And you did come by the writing bug and the storytelling bug naturally. It was part of your upbringing, right?
Well, right. My mom was a great storyteller, and her father, actually my namesake, was a early writer for the Saturday Evening Post and Collier's back then, when people used to binge those weekly magazines. And he wrote romantic comedies and also mysteries. Eventually, he got the call to go to Hollywood and worked at Paramount with the likes of Raymond Chandler and Billy Wilder, and did screenplays. And my mom always told this great story about waking up one morning in their bungalow, and there was Raymond Chandler doing his own version of The Big Sleep on the couch after a night of playing poker and drinking a lot of gin with my grandfather. And Raymond Chandler was Natalie dressed right down to his trademark white gloves that he always wore. So she had great stories like that. She weaned me reading, Travis McGee and Dashiell Hammett, and of course all the Chandler books. And so I was hooked from the get-go.
Oh, so now, did you always have third grade, you always had a feeling that you'd come back to the idea of bloody murder someday, even though, how long did it take you to get there as an adult? When did you start?
Yeah, that took a little bit of time. As I said, I started off as a journalist because I always liked stories. And when I was going to college at Oregon, I spent my summers up in Alaska. I was working in the salmon canning and commercial salmon fishing business. And after the season was over, I'd travel all over Alaska and got to know the backcountry really well. And then when I graduated and came down to look for work with a degree in journalism, I started in that vein and started selling freelance stories, and actually worked my way into doing assignments for like Travel and Leisure and Outside and some of the other travel magazines, mostly about Alaska. But then I just kept branching out and doing stories all over. You name it, I probably went there to do stories. And along that vein, at the same time, I always like to look at the story behind the story, not only the place, but the people that were there, and working towards preserving a place, preserving the wildlife that lived there. And it just kind of branched out from that.
You guys, you're hearing this, right? I mean, basically, you're hearing the call to read here. This is exactly what my readers are into. And I am wildly jealous of the places that you have gotten to go. My husband and I, when we dream of travel, we don't dream of museums and architecture and things like that. We're like, how wild can we go? Where can we go that no other humans currently are going? Where will we see the gnarliest animals and, et cetera? And it just really sounds exciting.
Well, yeah, and I can see how it got into my fiction, because when I was doing stories like that, I kind of got away from the idea of journalism, just the who, what, where, when, and why. I always wanted to put my readers into the story, and I the best way to do that usually was to put myself into the story. And I'll give you a good example of that. I was doing a story once on the illegal pet trade and there was a woman working in Sumatra who Baruti Galdikas, and she was kind of the Diane Fossey of orangutans. So I went out there. I was doing an adventure story as well, but took a river trip there, and then took a wooden dugout up to where they were rehabilitating orangutans. Had this station there, and interviewed the folks and everything that saw the orangutans. And we were walking back to the boat, to this dugout, and I was following the guide, and then the person behind me came up behind me and took my hand, and I go, "Yeah, it's a pretty slippery trail we're on. If you fall, don't make me fall too." But then the grip kept getting tighter and tighter, and I finally turned around, and it was an orangutan. It was just walking behind me, grabbed my hand. So of course I had to put that into the story. I mean, because it helps get the reader into it.
Absolutely. And I'm going to cry.
Well, I almost cried when he kept squeezing it, but at least he didn't drag me up into the tree. So
hey, he was, I don't know if he's watching out for you or saying, giving you
saying, yeah, you could slip here. I'll make sure you don't.
I love that. Absolutely love that. I'm kind of animal crazy as my following knows. And I must tell you that the excitement of our week was that our dog cart, we have a dry mushing dog cart that's finally arrived. We ordered it months ago, and we've spent our week teaching our Alaskan Malamutes to pull a dry mushing dog cart in Bakersfield, California, in the middle of the city. Everyone here thinks we are absolutely nuts. But I'm into the idea of there being so much more, not just with animals, but with all of nature, with all of the world around us, than we can actually see with our own eyes or hear with our own ears. And that connection you described with that orangutan just gets me in the feels. So
yeah.
Excuse me while I weep. We've got more commenters coming in. Sandra Hansen talking about enjoying your story, and a few oh wow. So people are listening. They're out there.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you, you guys. So the book you're looking for is The Broken Blood. It's not out yet. It's on pre-order. It's going to be out next month. If you're watching the premiere of this, the live release. If you're watching a replay, go out and get it now. Tell us a little bit more about the series than we've talked about, and about the upcoming release.
Yeah, sure. So, I started off the series in '69 when my protagonist, Nick Drake, is fresh out of Vietnam. He's suffering from what we now call, PTSD. And they had a program back there that they would allow veterans to re-enter society and through the Fish and Wildlife Service. And so that's what Nick did. And he ends up in a place he's never been to before, the wilds of southeastern Oregon, which is very high. I call it the high lonesome. It's very, very much desert. And along this trajectory of his life through the books, he becomes more in tune with nature. He learns about wildlife. He's saving wildlife. Of course, he's also solving some murders along the way. He meets a love interest. He gets accepted by a big community. And through that, he heals, and he learns, and of course the reader does too, why this place is so special. Most people might just write off southeastern Oregon as it's like a scrubby desert, but it's so far from that. And there's so much going on there in terms of all that. And so now when I get up to book 8, the Broken Blood, I do a little change in this. Instead of making it mostly Nick Drake's story, he has a partner that he's been with for a long time, another Fish and Wildlife Refuge ranger, another Vietnam vet, and a member of the Klamath tribe from Oregon. And this is really Loq's story, because he has a sister who is taken up with a Indian activist. Remember, this is back in the the 70s and things, and think about the American Indian movement. And so it's really Loq's story to help find his sister, who's off with this guy, and the FBI is involved. They're accusing him of murder, and it just becomes a much different viewpoint of the story. There is a Nick Drake story going on there, and it's kind of threaded in there. But this is a little change of pace, and I hope readers like it, because a lot of them asked me along the way, when are we going to get more about him? When are we going to get more about his perspective of the story?
I love that. Now, there are a few reader questions that are coming in. Charlene wants to know, is it okay to read the Nick Drake books out of order?
Yes, you can. And although I write them in order, but I'm really careful, as a lot of people are, and I'm sure you do the same, Pamela, is that I put a few tidbits in each of the subsequent books to kind of ground people back into where they are, and to remind them what character is who. I personally think they should be read in order, but a lot of people don't. I've had people purposely read them out of order. So
I love the gratification of especially for someone that writes. He describes it on his website, you guys, as whodunits, and that they're character driven. These are mysteries, but they're mysteries that are driven by the development of the character. And so there's something satisfying about going along that journey of growth with them, if you will. And so to that point, Sandra wants to know what the first book in the series is for the purists that want to start there.
Yeah. So the first book is called The Sorrow Hand. And the next book after that is called The Pity Heart. And then there's The Shaming Eyes. So by now you're probably seeing a bit of a theme there, that all of them have some kind of body part.
The titles are actually great. I think they're very impactful titles, and I really liked what you were going with there. And so for people that are the purists, start with The Sorrow Hand, but any order will do. And I am going to also now tell you that, is there anything else you want to say about these books before we switch into what we call the speed round, and we go a little less book specific and just kind of play with Dwight?
God, I don't know if I have a seatbelt on here. No, I think just read them, enjoy them. I love to hear from readers. I get a lot of emails from people, and I've been to some conferences and done book tours, and I always love the questions that people come up with. And in fact, I get a lot of good story ideas from them, and especially people that want to learn something. You'll find in my books, you're going to get entertained, but I hope you're going to get educated too about how things work in the natural world, and maybe increase your appreciation for the natural world. Learn a little bit about weather, learn a little bit about geology, and you'll learn a lot about archaeology and anthropology in a character-driven way. So it's not a classroom, but it's educational entertainment is the way I put it.
You're going on the journey with them. I love it. I love it. And Charlene's agreed after that she's going to start with the first book. So I think we've sold some people, and you've got time, you guys. You've got a month.
Read fast.
You got to read fast, but I know you guys can do it. You guys read a book a day, so go out there and get her done. All right. So this part of the conversation, we really, what we do is we relate back to things I talk with every author that comes on the show about. And that way my viewers and listeners can compare the ways in which we are alike and in which we are different. So to start off, if there is anything silly in your office, what is the silliest thing that you keep there?
I keep a telescope in my office, which is pretty unusual. Most people keep their telescopes outside, but I keep it in here because I have 2 black Labradors that are very rambunctious. And if I leave it outside, they'll eventually knock it over. So it's a pretty precious item to me because I live out in the country and I love to look at stars, but it stays in here with me.
That's pretty funny, but they don't give quite as good a view through the window, but I think I'd protect it too. I'll have to talk to you offline about getting a recommendation for a starter telescope.
Oh, okay.
We also
Happy to do that.
The face of the Bighorn Mountains in Wyoming, and we always are talking about how badly we want to look closer at what is on display for us up there. So we'll talk. So I see you in an office, and I see your books behind you. Very pretty. I'm waving to them. If you guys are listening and not watching, I see do I see a Jack McCool book too back there? Am I saying?
You do see a Jack McCool. So that's the first series I wrote. It's set in San Francisco, and Jack McCool is a recovering con artist, but he has to revert to his old skills to help solve murders in the city. And it's great because you really get this atmosphere of San Francisco. I lived up there for a time, and it's a little more witty and fast moving and humorous.
Do I get a little more of a Philip Marlowe feel with that, maybe? Or
I think he probably would. Yeah, a little bit.
I love it.
A little more wisecracking, and he's got a good cast of characters that are as colorful as San Francisco itself.
So you guys, some diversity in your reading picks when you start rolling or running the table with Dwight. So do you tend to write in your office, or do you mobile write?
I write in here. I probably spend too much time in here because once I start, I like a nice block of time to really go through the story and keep writing it. And if I walk away from it for too long, I have to get back into it, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I've had a week off, a week and a half. Okay, more than that. Well, I've waited for my editor to send back some comments or line edits and structural edits both at the same time, which is daunting. And I'm like, what book? What are you talking about? She's like giving me these comments. And I'm like, hello. It's funny, isn't it? How you can be so immersed in a world, step away, and then struggle, even though it's your world, to get back into it. It's kind of
exactly.
so. If you won the lottery tomorrow, what is it you would spend your money on?
Wow, that's a good question. First thing I'd probably do is I'm proud to say I'm a new grandfather.
Yay!
I probably, put some bucks into a college fund for my granddaughter, and after that, treat myself to another trip back to Africa. My wife and I haven't been there for a while. We went with our whole family. It was a dream come true safari, so I'd do that again for sure.
Oh my gosh, another thing for us to talk about on offline. Actually, what I'm sensing is that you're going to be tired of hearing from me asking for travel tips. So you may want to put a block on my email address, when it starts coming in. Separate folder like later, Pamela, later. So when you sit down to write, are you more of a plotter or a pantser type of guy?
I started off when I was writing fiction, well, for novels. I started off writing short stories to begin with and put those out to literary journals and got a few published, and one of them got turned into a book, etc. But when I started writing the Jack McCool series, I plotted it out. I'd arc scenes through it. I did the same when I started the Jack McCool, but now I'm what's called a pantser. I kind of have an idea, I have the characters down, and I just start writing it. And I let it develop organically as I go. I change a bunch of it along the way. And mostly by now, when you're writing a series, at least when I'm writing a series, I let the characters do the talking, and they're guiding me along the way. Sometimes a character speaks a little louder than the other. They get more airtime. They get more page time. But if I have it too locked down, it's not as fresh, and doesn't spark enough for me. So,
yeah, it is amazing how they become so much a part of you that they can just tell you the story, that these people and
exactly.
they know what's going on. They're real. So
Yeah.
I love that. And let me think. I'm going to give you.
Can I just say one thing? I heard myself say that, and then I realized some people on the listening and tuning in may not know what a pantser is, and it's not illegal. Trust me. What it really means is writers are writing by the seat of their pants.
Exactly. Plotters are not plotters with a D, they're plotters with a T, and they outline and really pre-plan their plot. And the pantsers are going without their pants. They're flying by the seat, not illegally so. And that's why we have telescopes in our office. I'm just kidding. And let's see which of the last ones I will choose for you. Okay, so if Nick is recovering from a substance abuse issue.
Yes.
So I'm not sure of the answer to this. If you and or Nick were going out for happy hour, what would the two of you order?
Well, I know what I would order. And I know what Nick would order. Nick is on the wagon from everything because when he was in Vietnam, he got addicted to heroin and painkillers. So he's got to be a complete teetotaler. And if you read the books, you'll see that he struggles with it. For me personally, I live in an incredible region of California, close to the Santa Lucia Highlands, which makes some of the best wine in the world. I know I'm going to ding Napa and Sonoma a little bit here, but down where I live on the Monterey Peninsula, it's tremendous wine. And I have a friend, Sal Romby, who makes the best red wine. He's got a glass of Petite Syrah with my name on it every time I go see him. That's what I'd be ordering.
Okay, that's another recommendation I'm going to need. We're about to move to France for a year, though, and we're going to be like exploring French wines. And we've been living an hour from Paso Robles for a year. So we're going to have all these comparative points. My husband's a beer guy, but he's along for it.
Paso has great wine down there.
Yeah,
it's
they do.
It's not too far from where I live. So
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been absolutely a treat. I will give you guys a little spoiler. If you are a subscriber to my newsletter, sometime this year, subscribers to my newsletter may be getting a special treat where I might be able to hook you up with one of Dwight's books, but you've got to be a subscriber in order to participate in this little fun game. So go to my website, PamelaFaganHutchins.com. While you're at it, go to Dwight's. You also have a link for people to subscribe to your newsletter there. And you want to tell them what they get, Dwight?
Well, if you subscribe to my newsletter, you get great news, of course, every month. And I talk about what I'm writing when my next release is out, but you also get a free book. And so if you go there, you're going to get a free Jack McCool book, the very first in this series. And sit back and have a chuckle when you read it.
Awesome. I downloaded it myself just earlier today. So I just wanted to tell you that we've gotten a few more people that want to weigh in before we bid them adieu.
Sure.
Charlotte, interested in Jack McCool. We're taking French lessons right now, and I can't speak any of it. Charlene said Jack McCool sounds interesting. Sandra really enjoyed this interview. Thank you, Sandra. And then we have that would be wonderful. Look forward to reading Dwight's books, and a thank you. So thank you, everyone, for chatting with us. And Dwight, thank you so much for being on.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been great. Thank you so much for having me on.
You are absolutely welcome. Now, you guys, this really is for the Patrick Flint readers. I'm not kidding you. The Jack McCool readers is going to be anybody that's listening, but specifically if you enjoy my Patrick Flint, you really got to go pick up The Sorrow Hand and catch up before The Broken Blood comes out, because there's a lot of complimentary feel to these. And there's my tip for you. Personally, a fan. I am encouraging you, in the meantime, to go out to my website, look for the past shows. You're going to find that you can link to and watch them, catch up with what I've been doing with the podcast, and learn some new readers that you might not already be reading. All the people that come on my show are people that I believe you'll enjoy. You can also prep for upcoming shows, see who's going to be on, and read ahead, if you will. It's not going to hurt my feelings. You already know this. If while you're there, you take a look and see all the different formats I have available and all the different series. I've been busy for the last 15 years. You'll see it when you get there. Finally, you know what I have to do. Crime and Wine is a solely owned and copyrighted production of Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. That's a digital media company with over 4 million viewers and listeners in 153 plus countries, of which you are now one. And I thank you very much for being that. I hope that you guys have a great week and that you go out and read a lot of great books. Thanks for joining us today on Crime and Wine, chats with crime fiction authors and Pamela Fagan Hutchins. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll check back in with us next time for more thrills, suspense, and stories that will mystify, sometimes horrify, and always leave you wanting more.